Robert Barrow sat in a cafe on the corner of Main Street, nervously stirring his coffee and gazing out the window at Iowa's gray October sky. Across from him sat Clyde Marlowe, his best friend since high school, watching Robert's state with deep concern. Robert looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, his suit hanging loosely, so unlike the always tidy medical equipment sales manager. "Clyde, I can't live like this anymore," Robert finally said, setting down his cup. "These suspicions are eating me alive. I think Lynetta is cheating on me." Clyde frowned, leaning back in his chair. He had known Robert over 20 years and had never seen him this way. Usually calm and level-headed, the 35-year-old now looked like a hunted animal. "Rob, are you sure? Maybe it's just the pregnancy affecting you. You know how it is with the first child. Nerves, anxiety." "No, it's more than that," Robert shook his head. "She's been acting strange for the past 4 months. She hides her phone when I enter a room, gets messages late at night, says they're from coworkers. But what coworkers would text an accountant at 11:00 p.m.? Clyde listened intently, studying his friend's face. Robert wasn't prone to drama or baseless suspicion. If he's talking like this, something serious must be wrong. And also, Robert continued, lowering his voice, "She's become cold. We hardly talk anymore. She used to tell me everything. Now she gives one-word answers. And this distance didn't begin with the pregnancy. It started long before that. Have you tried talking to her directly?" "Of course," he said, "several times. She denies everything, says I'm making mountains out of molehills. She swears she loves me, but I can see it, Clyde. I'm not blind." Robert ran his hand over his face. Clyde noticed his fingers trembling. This was more serious than he thought. "What's the worst part?" Clyde asked softly. Robert's voice dropped. "I'm starting to wonder if it's even my child." Clyde sat up sharply. That was a heavy accusation. "Rob, do you realize what you're saying?" "I do, and it doesn't make it easier. But think about it. If she is being unfaithful, how can I be sure I'm the father? The timeline fits, but that doesn't prove anything." Clyde was quiet a while, gathering his thoughts. He worked at a bank, used to evaluating risks. Now he saw a man on the brink of collapse. "Listen," he said finally, "you need to find out. You can't keep living in doubt, especially with a baby on the way. Either your fears are justified or not. It's better to know than to dwell in torment. How do I find out?" "Hire a private investigator." Robert shook his head. "You don't need to go drastic right away. Start small, discreetly. Observe, talk to neighbors. If you can, check her phone. Be careful." Robert nodded. A determination lit his eyes for the first time in months. "You're right. I have to know, no matter what it reveals." They left the cafe. Robert drove home through the city, replaying Clyde's words. The uncertainty had been killing him quietly. He resolved, better the bitter truth than endless doubt. As he neared home, Robert decided to begin with their neighbor, Seida Lindquist, a nurse at the local clinic. Always friendly, outgoing, with windows facing Robert's house. If someone saw something, she might have... He parked and walked to Seida's small cottage. The 24-year-old opened the door at once, as though expecting him. Casual clothes, hair in a ponytail. "Hi, Robert, how are you? How's Lynetta feeling?" "Hi, Sage, she's fine, getting ready to give birth. Nervous, of course." Sage invited him in, offered coffee. Robert declined politely. "What's going on?" she said, sitting opposite him. Robert chose his words carefully, not wanting to seem paranoid. "There've been strange things lately, items out of place. Sometimes I feel someone has been in the house when we're not home. Maybe I'm just anxious about the birth, but still. Have you noticed anyone visiting our house when I wasn't here?" Sage frowned. "That's odd. I don't often pay attention to neighbors, but yes, I've seen a man come by your place several times in recent months. Tall, dark-skinned, about your age. Usually in the afternoons when I'm sure you aren't home. Jeans, a shirt." Robert's heart pounded. "Could you describe him more?" "Well, he seemed comfortable, confident walk, and he has the same kind of car as you, only darker." Robert's mind raced. The description matched his brother, James. James did have a similar model, just dark blue. Did he seem familiar? Sage considered. You know, now that I think of it, yes, he reminds me of you. Not exactly, but there was something in his face, his bearing, that echoed you. Robert fought for calm. More and more signs pointed to James. But how? James had been loyal, always there. Thank you, Sage. You've helped more than you know. Maybe he really was a relative. Maybe James visited Lynetta when I was away. Of course, Sage said. If you need anything else, just ask. Give my best to Lynetta. Robert left. His head spun with possibility. James came by. Unmentioned visits to Lynetta, innocent or not? He crept toward home. Sounds drifted. The due date near, the baby could come at any moment. Lynetta was upstairs, folding baby clothes. Beautiful, tall, slim despite pregnancy, expressive brown eyes, short curly hair. As she worked, she looked calm. But Robert searched for something unusual. Faintly, he spoke. Lynetta. She paused, folding clothes, turned with a small breath. How about inviting James over for dinner this week? Robert suggested. Lynetta froze, for just a moment, then recovered. Sure, she said softly. Though, you know, with the baby possibly coming any day, it might be hard to plan much. Robert watched that flicker in her eyes. Surprise, fatigue, fear. No, of course not. Why would you think that? Lynetta replied. Just a neighbor said she saw someone familiar at our house. I wondered if it was James. I don't know who it could have been. Maybe the mailman or one of those delivery people. You know how many baby packages show up these days? Lynetta resumed her tasks, though Robert noticed her motions had become sharper, more strained. She was clearly anxious, though trying hard to conceal it. The rest of the evening passed with the usual chores. Lynetta packed her hospital bag, checked her papers, and made lists of what to buy. Robert helped, but his mind was elsewhere entirely. Sage's observation haunted him. Lynetta's behavior only fed his doubts. When she went to bed, Robert sat alone in the living room for hours, trying to understand what was happening. He resolved that tomorrow he would speak with James personally. He was his brother, someone he had trusted all his life. If there really was something between James and Lynetta, Robert needed proof. For the next 3 days, he lived in nervy tension. The suspicions that had grown after his talk with Sage needed confirmation, so he launched his own investigation. Early Thursday morning, as Lynetta left for her regular doctor visit, he seized his chance. He began with the most obvious evidence, his wife's phone. She'd left it home, rare for her. She never misplaced it, but that morning, apparently she did. Robert's hands trembled as he picked up her familiar pink phone case. He knew he was crossing a line, but his need to know outweighed his scruples. Remarkably, the phone wasn't locked. Lynetta had never hidden anything before. He opened her message list and sifted through the chats. Most were about work, the baby, errands. But near the bottom he found a contact named Jay. Robert's heart pounded. He opened it and saw messages over the past 5 months. Sweet, intimate lines. I miss you. When can we meet? She had written 3 days ago. Rob will be late at work today. Come over at 7 o'clock. Lynetta replied. I can't wait for when we can be together openly, Jay wrote. We'll talk after the birth, she said. Robert felt the floor drop away. His worst fears had been written plainly, but who was Jay? Could it be James? Further scrolling revealed mention of rail work, something only James did. Jay was James. The pain sank in deeper. They discussed the baby's father, too. Are you sure it's yours? Lynetta asked. The timing fits. Let's deal with tests later. Robert dropped the phone, unable to read more. His hands shook. He barely held his water glass. The betrayal was total. His beloved wife and his faithful brother had been deceiving him. Worse, the child he waited for might not be his. He forced himself calm. Photographed the messages, cleared browsing history, returned the phone. For hours he gathered more. Receipts for dinners at places they'd never'd been, dates matching his late work nights, new lingerie she never wore in his presence. Each discovery struck like a blow. By midday, Robert felt he could not stay home. Lynetta would return soon. He wasn't ready to face her pretending ignorance. He drove to the train depot where James worked, fixing locomotives as usual. The 32-year-old emerged from beneath a train when Robert arrived. "Rob, what's wrong?" James asked. "Have you been seeing Lynetta behind my back?" Robert asked, raw. James looked stunned. "You're insane," he said. "Lynetta is like family to me. I visited to help set up the nursery. I brought paint, moved furniture, but nothing else." "Why didn't you tell me?" Robert demanded, pain and anger mixing. "Because I didn't think it mattered," James said. "I didn't want to worry you." Robert studied him, face, eyes, posture, searched for the truth. "I swear, there's nothing between us but family." "I know you're my brother," Robert said finally, voice shaking. "And maybe this is just my fear. I've been tormented lately. Everything feels uncertain." "It's okay," James said, putting a hand on Robert's shoulder. "If you need me, I'm here. I would never betray you." Robert nodded, the weight heavy but somewhat lifted. "Thanks, James. I'm sorry. I might be overreacting. I just need to know." "I understand," James replied. "Let's just try to get through this." "No, of course not. Why are you asking?" Lynetta replied. "Just a neighbor said she saw a familiar man at our house. I thought maybe it was James. I don't know who it could have been. Maybe a mailman or delivery guy. You know how many baby packages arrive these days?" Lynetta resumed what she was doing, but Robert saw that her movements were sharper, her body tense. She was clearly worried, though she tried to hide it. The rest of the evening followed routine tasks. Lynetta packed her hospital bag, checked her paperwork, and made lists of things to buy. Robert helped, but his thoughts were far away. Sage's words kept echoing in his mind. His wife's behavior reinforced his doubts. When Lynetta went to bed, Robert sat alone in the living room for a long time, pondering what was happening. He decided that tomorrow he would confront James directly. He was his brother, the person he had trusted unconditionally all his life. If something truly was going on between James and Lynetta, he needed proof. For the next 3 days he lived in mounting anxiety. The suspicion that emerged after his talk with Sedelin demanded confirmation, and so he began his own investigation. On Thursday morning, as Lynetta left for her doctor's appointment, Robert seized his opportunity. He started with the most obvious place, his wife's phone. Lynetta had left it behind, rare for her. She never forgot it, but that morning she did. Robert's hands shook as he picked up the familiar pink case. He knew he was crossing a line in terms of trust, but his need for the truth overpowered his moral hesitation. To his surprise, the phone wasn't locked. Lynetta had never hidden anything before. He opened her message list and read carefully. Most chats were about work, birth prep, and baby shopping, but at the bottom he found a contact named Jay. Robert's chest tightened. He opened their messages, sent over the past 5 months, and the tone was intimate. "I miss you. When can we see each other?" she wrote 3 days ago. "Rob will be late at work today. Come over at 7 o'clock, Lynetta replied. "I can't wait until we can be together openly," Jay responded. "We'll talk after the birth," her message read. Robert felt the floor shift beneath him. His worst fears were now in black and white. But who was Jay? Could it be James? Scrolling further down, he saw mention of railroad work, something only James did. Yes, Jay was James. The betrayal cut deeper. They'd even discussed the baby's paternity. "Are you sure it's yours?" she asked. "Timing fits. Let's handle that after the baby is born." Robert threw the phone aside. His hands trembled. He could barely grip his glass of water. The betrayal was total. The wife he adored and the brother he respected had deceived him, and the child he awaited might not be his. He forced himself calm, took photos of the messages, deleted the browsing history, returned the phone. Over the next hour or two, he searched for more evidence, receipts from restaurant dinners he'd never attended, dates matching his work nights. In her bedside drawer, he found receipts to places unknown to him, lingerie she never wore in his presence. Every discovery pounded his heart. The woman he planned to spend his life with, whom he trusted, had been unfaithful, and his brother had betrayed him. By noon, Robert felt he couldn't stay home any longer. Lynetta would return soon. He wasn't ready to pretend all was normal. He drove to the train depot where James worked. Under trains, always fixing engines. He found him there. "Rob, what's wrong?" James asked. "Have you been seeing Lynetta behind my back?" Robert asked, voice raw. James seemed taken aback. "You're out of your mind. Lynetta is like a sister. I helped set up the nursery. I moved furniture, that's it." "Why didn't you tell me?" Robert demanded. "Because I didn't think you needed to know," James replied. "I just didn't want to worry you." Robert studied him, his face, his eyes, his posture, searching for honesty. "Do you swear there was nothing more than family between you and Lynetta?" "I swear," James said. "I'd never betray you. You mean everything to me. Since our parents died, you're all I had." Robert felt a hollow ache. Either James was an excellent liar or truly innocent. But how to reconcile what he saw on the phone? "I'm sorry, James," he finally said. "I've been tormented by these doubts. I don't know what to believe anymore." James nodded. "I understand, Rob. If you need me, I'm here. We'll figure this together." Whatever their history, what mattered now was making sure his wife and child were safe. "How far apart are the contractions?" he asked, pulling on his shirt quickly. "About 7 minutes. Dr. Harris said once they reach 5-minute intervals we should head to the hospital." Robert helped Lynetta up from bed and guided her to the bathroom. Then he retrieved the bag he'd packed and loaded it into the car. Lynetta moved slowly, stopping with each new surge of pain. "It'll be okay," Robert said, supporting her down the stairs. "We'll make it in time. The doctors know what they're doing." By 8:00 a.m., the contractions were every 5 minutes, and they set off for St. Mary's Hospital. The drive to the medical center normally took 20 minutes, but Saturday morning traffic was light, and they arrived in 15. In the emergency room, the attending nurse immediately handled paperwork and escorted Lynetta into the maternity ward. Robert remained in the reception area on the first floor. There were soft chairs, machines with coffee and juice, and stacks of magazines on the tables. "Labor can last for hours, especially with a first child," the nurse explained. "We'll keep you updated. Don't worry, your wife will be fine." Robert tried to read a magazine, sipped from the coffee machine, and paced the hallway, but his mind kept snapping back to the recent days. He knew the baby might not be his. He knew how long Lynetta had been deceitful with his brother, yet he couldn't stop worrying about her well-being. Around noon, the same nurse came to him. "Mr. Barrows, your wife is in active labor. Everything's progressing, but it may still be a few hours. Can I see her?" he asked. "Not yet, but as soon as the baby arrives, we'll call you immediately." Robert nodded and resumed waiting. Other husbands and relatives appeared in the hallway. Some smoked nervously outside. Others made phone calls, sharing updates. Robert felt disconnected from the excitement around him. At 3:00 in the afternoon, the nurse came again, this time with a smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Barrows. You have a son. He's healthy. 3 kilos, 400 grams. The mother is doing well." Robert felt a strange mix of joy and bitterness. The baby was born healthy. That was what counted. "But whose baby?" he thought. "When can I see them?" he asked. "In about 90 minutes. The staff is performing essential procedures. Then both mother and baby will be transferred to the postpartum ward on the 4th floor." Robert thanked the nurse and called Clyde to share the news. "Rob, congrats! How's Lynetta? And the baby?" "Everything's okay. It's a boy, healthy. They're moving them to the ward now." "That's wonderful. I'm happy for you." Robert didn't want to spoil Cyril's joy with his doubts about the baby's paternity. "Thanks, Clyde. We'll talk when I'm home." "Of course. Tell Lynetta I said congrats. And get some rest, new dad." At 4:00, a nurse took Robert to the postpartum ward on the 4th floor, a long corridor with white walls, many doors, disinfectant smell. Room 407 was at the end, beside a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. Lynetta rested in bed, looking weary yet content. Beside her, in a clear crib, their son slept wrapped in a blue blanket. "Hi," she said softly when Robert entered. "Meet your son." Robert approached the crib, peering at the newborn. The little one's fists were clenched, breathing soft and steady. In those first hours, it was impossible to tell whose features he'd inherited. But Robert couldn't stop wondering if there was something of James in him. "He's beautiful," Robert said, unsure what else to say. "Doctor says everything is fine. Delivery went well. How are you feeling?" "Tired," she replied, "but happy. Rob, we're parents." She reached for his hand. He took it, but inside he felt hollow. The woman he loved had been unfaithful with his brother, and now she spoke of joy as though it erased everything. "I want to name him Marcus, after your grandfather," Lynetta said. "What do you think?" "It's a lovely name," Robert agreed. They talked a little more about plans, sorted out their future. Lynetta's excitement showed. Robert responded in one-word replies, fighting the urge to voice the turmoil inside. "You need rest," she said finally. "I'll stay in the hall for a while, then go home and get my things. Did you call James yet?" "He was waiting for word about being an uncle." Robert stiffened at the mention of his brother's name. "Not yet. I'll call him later." He left the room and sat on a bench in the quiet hallway. Only the occasional footsteps of nurses or cries of nearby babies broke the stillness. The baby was born. Now he must decide what to do next. Around 6, footsteps approached. Turning, Robert saw James walking toward him with flowers and chocolates. "Rob, congratulations." James smiled, hugging him. "How are you? How's Lynetta? How's the baby?" Robert felt bitterness rise. His brother, who had betrayed him, now played the doting uncle. "Nephew?" Robert asked coldly, stepping back. James noticed the shift. "Something's wrong, Rob. You seem distant for a new father." "Walk with me," Robert said, going toward the window that overlooked the parking lot. "Stop pretending," Robert said. "I know. About you and Lynetta? About your visits when I wasn't home? About lies?" James's face fell, pale. "Rob, you're wrong. Don't lie to me in my own face. I saw the messages. I miss you. When will we meet?" "It's obvious. Rob, I didn't want you to find out this way," James said. "How else would you have me find out? Maybe you thought concealing it would be easier. Maybe until after the birth." "James," Robert's voice trembled. "You betrayed me. You ruined my life." Robert grabbed his brother by the collar, pushing him against the glass. "This child," he said. "Is it yours?" James could not meet his brother's eyes. "Yes," he admitted. "Most likely." At that moment, something snapped. The anger he had bottled exploded. Robert pushed him harder. James stumbled toward the open window. "Rob, no!" James cried. But it was done. Robert stood breathing heavily next to the open pane. Only then did he realize what he had done. Down below on the asphalt of the parking lot lay the motionless body of his brother. The corridor was quiet. No one had seen what happened. All the wards were closed and the nurses were at the other end of the department. Robert quickly closed the window and headed for the elevator. The descent to the first floor seemed to take forever. In the elevator, he tried to tidy up his clothes and hair and pull himself together. He had to look natural. Leaving the hospital, he headed for the place where James lay. His brother's body was mangled from the fall, blood slowly spreading across the asphalt. Robert crouched down beside him and checked his pulse, even though he knew it was pointless. James was dead. What happened? A hospital security guard who had heard the sound of the fall ran up to him. "I don't know," Robert replied, pretending to be in shock. "Well, I just came out of the hospital and saw him here. It looks like he fell out of a window. Do you know him?" "He's my brother. He came to visit my wife who just gave birth." The guard called an ambulance and the police. 10 minutes later, the parking lot was filled with emergency vehicles. Robert answered the police officer's questions, pretending to be a distraught relative. He said that James had gone up to the 4th floor, and after a while, he heard a loud thud. "Perhaps he felt ill and lost consciousness by the open window," suggested the investigator. "We will examine the scene, but so far everything points to an accident." Robert nodded, agreeing with the police's version of events. He was torn between feelings of relief that James would no longer be able to ruin his life and horror at the realization that he had killed his own brother. When the police finished their initial investigation, Robert said he wanted to return to his wife to tell her the tragic news. The investigator allowed him to go up to the ward, asking him to remain available for further questions. Robert headed for his car. In the glove compartment was a gun, a small revolver he had bought a year ago for self-defense, and for which he had a license to carry. He took the gun, hid it under his jacket, and went back to the hospital. In the elevator on its way up to the 4th floor, Robert thought about how his life was now ruined. His brother was dead, killed by his own hand. His wife had betrayed him in the most despicable way. The child he had been expecting turned out to be someone else's. He had nothing left to live for. The 4th floor corridor was empty. The nurses had apparently gathered in the doctor's office to discuss the incident with the fall from the window. Robert quietly opened the door to room 407. Lynetta was lying in bed, the baby sleeping in a crib nearby. Hearing footsteps, she turned her head. "Rob, what was that noise outside? I heard sirens." Robert closed the door behind him and turned to his wife. "Lynetta, I have something to tell you. What happened? You look strange." "James is dead. He fell out of the window." Lynetta sat up abruptly in bed. "What? How did that happen?" "He confessed everything to me, about your relationship, about being the father of the child." Lynetta's face turned pale. "Rob, I can explain everything." "Explain?" Robert pulled out a gun. "How can you explain betraying me with my own brother?" "Rob, what are you doing?" "Put the gun away. You ruined my life, Lynetta. You and James destroyed everything I had. Please think about the baby. He didn't do anything wrong. That baby isn't mine." "You confirmed it yourself." Lynetta tried to get out of bed, but she was still weak from giving birth. "Rob, please, let's talk. I know I did something wrong, but we can fix everything." "Fix? How can you fix months of lying to me? How can you fix giving birth to someone else's child? I love you, Rob. I always have. What happened with James?" "It was a mistake. A mistake that lasted 6 months." Robert raised the gun and pointed it at his wife. Lynetta closed her eyes and pressed her hands to her chest. "Rob, no." The shot rang out in the silence of the room. Lynetta fell back onto the pillows, her eyes wide open, a red stain spreading across her chest. She stared at her husband for a few more seconds, her lips moving silently, then fell still. Robert lowered the gun and looked at the cradle. The baby continued to sleep, undisturbed by the shot. Small and defenseless, he was not to blame for anything. But every time Robert looked at him, he would remember the betrayal. Robert left the room, closed the door, and sat down on a bench in the hallway. He placed the gun next to him. In a few minutes, the nurses would discover Lynetta's body. There would be a commotion, and the police would arrive. He would be arrested, tried, and sentenced. But now, sitting in the silence of the hospital corridor, Robert could only think that his life was over. Everything he had lived for, his family, his love, his future, had been destroyed by the betrayal of those closest to him. And now he himself had become a murderer, and there was no way back.